The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Let's listen as Lorraine Lapointe, coach, therapist, educator, speaker, and founder of Head Heart Synergy, brings together another enlightened guest to inspire and motivate us to move forward, achieve our dreams and desires, so that we experience midlife awakening.
And I'm your host, Lorraine Lapointe. Today we'll enjoy another candid conversation that reveals how to bring back a sense of balance and how to find forward focus. Today, take just a few moments to join us as we explore the possibilities and the perspectives that provide us with greater inner peace, power, passion, and purpose. Because that's what I call living at the edge of fulfillment in a midlife awakening. Well, hello, and welcome back wherever you are in the world. We have a wonderful show for you today, but I'm going to start out with a question. Maybe, are you feeling like tired lately? Have you ever felt kind of afraid to change things up, yet you find yourself, wanting something more, being a little restless? Like often there's a belief that we're supposed to be superhuman and we're doing it all or to do it all. And so we become a little burned out. But by now, at least ripe old age or young age, however you relate to it, we know that living can be risky business. Remember that movie? And here's a little wisdom from Brené Brown. I was reading her earlier this week, and who doesn't adore Brené Brown? She exposes our vulnerable underbelly and gives us permission to talk about it. And so recently I read in her blog, and she suggested that typically midlife is a dangerous kind of suffering. It's the kind of suffering that allows you to pretend everything is okay. Everything looks perfectly normal on the outside, but on the inside, sometimes we're barely holding it together. We want to reach out, but that inner judge we have inside holds us back. You ever had that feeling? If you have, go ahead and pop a yes or a yay, or you know what I mean, in the chat. And, this inner judge saboteur causes a terrible case of what we call cognitive dissonance. We feel torn between desperately wanting everyone to see our struggle so that we can stop pretending, and doing whatever it takes to make sure no one ever sees anything, except what we've edited and approved for posting online. And the painful irony is that the very things that kept us safe growing up ultimately get in the way of becoming the parents. Good morning, Chrissy. Becoming the parents, the partners, the people that we really want to be. Each of us has this judge character in our mind. In fact, we have a whole gang of 9 other saboteurs as well that like to frustrate us through life. And they whisper in our minds things about, being unworthy, that we don't matter, or that you can, that sense like I can never be enough. Well, and unfortunately for us, they see their job is to mold us into being perfect pleasers. Good morning, Christine. Being perfect pleasers or performers, and all of our efforts to seek perfection and all that rule following that we do is what we now find suffocating at our time in life. And we work hard to keep people at a distance. And then we find that the distance is turned into intolerable loneliness. And even when we want to let go of our caretaking of others and let others learn to take care of themselves, sometimes we find it really hard work to work through the pushback. That sense of guilt, shame, or blame. It's kind of a game that comes with setting new boundaries for ourselves. Is any of this resonating for you? Because you might recognize that this legacy is inherited from our past, and it has created our personal elixir, a saboteur elixir, I call it, the combination of the cast of characters or inner voices that keep us suffering, feeling small and uncertain. And sometimes we believe that this is who we really are, but it's not. It's not who we are. Thankfully, it's just part of our story. Maya Angelou actually wrote that there's no greater agony in bearing an untold story inside of us. So today we're going to reveal a story about a guest who is like me, and she helps us clear away doubts, fears, confusion, so that super achievers like us and yourself can move towards a greater, that sense of ease. We share the mission to shift the consciousness of our planet through empowerment. So in this episode of Edge of Fulfillment, you'll learn more about how we are all on our purposeful journey, and we can find ways to awaken our soul and live with more passion, authenticity, creativity in all areas of our life. And on today's show, we'll welcome another guest that knows how to access that true nature and to gain a clear internal guidance, so we can stop looking outside of ourselves for answers. One of the things I know or I've found is that when you improve your relationship with yourself, you improve it with others, and you can identify, release old patterns, and then you start to feel empowered. By the way, for those I haven't met yet, here I am chatting on. I'm Lorraine Lapointe, and you can think of me as your host and guide who shows you how to shift your thoughts, your feelings, and beliefs so that you can feel more fulfilled and purposeful in your life. Because research shows that as we dial down our own personal elixir of saboteurs, our perspective changes. We get stronger. We have opportunities to develop our own mental wellness. And that's why I reach out on this radio and talk for TV program, so that together we can create a sacred and safe and inspiring space to explore different ways to live so that we have more greater peace, power, passion, and purpose, as you heard at the intro. So whether you're here live or you come across this later on, I want to say welcome, and I want to invite you to engage and connect with us. Because each week we broadcast in all kinds of different places through different social media. And if you find something interesting in the conversation, be sure to let us know what that is. Because for every comment, like, or share, as you may already know, my company, Head Heart Synergy, gives a day's worth of fresh water wherever it's needed most in the world. So I want to thank Chrissy. She's already triggered at least 2 or more days of fresh water around the world. And I want to thank her for helping me to help you to help the world and make this place a better place to be. So simply add your comments and your questions, and remember to send an invitation encouraging your friends and family to join this episode, because we're going to explore how the goddess knows that she's worth it here on the Edge of Fulfillment on W4WN.com, on the Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page, and on Talk for TV. And after, much better place. I agree, Chrissy. After this short break, we'll connect with today's guest. And you are listening to the Edge of Fulfillment, and we will be right back after this short break.
Mental fitness, the missing X factor for enhancing performance, achievement, and success. Mental fitness empowers you with the magic of 3: stabilized mood, peace of mind, deeper relationships. Time to make it happen? Grow the self-command muscle. Intercept your self-defenses. Build your inner wisdom. In less than 15 minutes a day, gain the missing X factor. Let me show you how.
There comes a time we wonder, what's next? For women like us, as we stand at the edge of fulfillment, are you feeling unsettled, restless, not quite right? That's midlife awakening. Are you looking for fulfillment? or to squeeze more juice out of life? Midlife awakening at the edge of fulfillment, don't miss it. We understand. By phone or laptop, wherever you are, come join us. Friday 10 a.m. Eastern Time, on Head Heart Synergy Facebook business page, or here, on the Women4 Women Network Radio and Talk 4 TV.
Oh, welcome back. And of course, this week we are talking about fulfillment, as we usually do. And our guest this week has been called Leadership Coach, a CPO, which actually means a Chief Possibility Officer. She's a high energy powerhouse who blends business know-how with an intuitive insight to guide women how to tap into their purpose and passion and create lives that they love. You know, her clients say she's a unique blend of common sense with a little bit of magic. So I'm sure we're going to enjoy that. This week's guest helps heart-centered seekers find ways to feel balanced and connected so they can embrace life and live like full out. And she's hosted several goddess retreats so women can gain clarity and find things that are more meaningful, because she knows that goddess knows she's worth it. Do you? Give yourself a moment to think about that. And today we'll find out how she takes her own medicine as she asks big questions to find the answers so she can beat her drum to the rhythm of her own music. And I'm going to stop talking about her and welcome her to the Edge of Fulfillment. Welcome, Carrie Asuncion. How are you, Carrie?
How about if I take it off of mute?
Don't you love tech when it works?
Oh, yes, yes. I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to your program. I'm feeling a deeper level of calm, a deeper level of acceptance, and that ability of, even though I know what I'm going to be talking about the goddess knows, it's a deeper sense of anticipation of what we're going to co-create together today. So just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and look at us. We're totally coordinated, and we didn't even call each other first.
I love what you're wearing. You look so goddessy today.
Well, thank you. You too. And we can't see our listeners and our watchers, but I'm sure you're doing just as well out there too. And by all means, let us know. So I want to thank you for being with us today, Carrie, because I understand that you spent the last 20 years mastering tools that help you leave that stress kind of stuff behind. I'd love to know, where would you like to start your story?
You know, I think where I'd like to start it is just how this whole goddess knows came about.
Yes.
It's so curious that where we find inspiration, right? I have a regular meditation practice, and I had been asking, so I'm writing a book. I'm going to be taking off to go to Hawaii in a couple of weeks, and I decided that I just need to sequester myself. Yes, going to the Big Island, one of my sacred places in the world, and going on a spiritual retreat. And I realized what is really the content that's coming through, and I'm going to be sharing some of it with your listeners today, is Goddess Knows. Oh, yes. Good morning, Rachel.
Yes. Good morning, Rachel. Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to hear what Carrie's going to share. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a moment-to-moment co-creation, isn't it? Because I began to realize, and I became inspired. Like, so what does Goddess know when she's in her power? So I just came off of offering a program called More Time in My Days. And I began to realize that, what does Goddess know? She knows. She's just like that queen in her life. She understands how to be discerning. She understands not to worry about the small things. She also realizes, and this became really, really, as I was in nature last weekend sailing, I began to realize, and she knows that we are all inextricably connected. And therefore, when I thrive, you thrive.
Isn't that a beautiful message? There's so much conflict and uncertainty and confusion in the world at the moment. And that message, let's repeat that just for those who it might have just gone by. Because
Yeah.
sometimes we hear things and we don't hear them. So just
Yes.
say that again for everyone.
We know when we look at nature that we are inextricably connected, that when anything I do affects the collective. It's that ability so that we know that if we pollute our end of the ocean, because I was out on the ocean last week realizing or contemplating this and how I want to express this in my book. But when we pollute one side of the ocean, what does it do? It pollutes the other side. And I think the pandemic has really helped us to see how connected we are. And so, yes, anyway, it's that whole thing about realizing that when we find our worth, when we stand up for what we know is to be most important, it's building a collective. I think you and I have that same value of building the collective where we can rise up together with collaboration. And so that's what Goddess knows. She knows that she's part of this totality that we live in.
And it's so important, I think, to develop that sense. Like, it's so easy to feel alone and separate and small in our little worlds, and to forget that we are connected. We're all connected and part of a whole. That it's truly an illusion to consider yourself separate.
Oh, well said.
Because once you begin to see how connected we all are, it's the world opens up with possibilities. I love that you're a CPO, possibilities officer. So tell us more about that.
Well, I began to realize, so my background was in human resources. I was a VP of human resources and had actually really burned myself out working in corporate because I was trying to act like a man in a distinctly feminine body. Right? Has anybody ever done that before? Right?
Guilty as charged.
Okay, right. So I began to realize, what is one of my superpowers? And yes, I could do structure well, like you talked about in the intro, that I'm at feet on the grounds, magical woman. And so I knew I could do the structured part, but really what my superpower was to see possibilities or to be a creatrix. And so that became like my signature, is that I help clients to gain clarity on different possibilities. I'll give you an example. I was actually interviewing, I do some coaching around the world, and through another coaching firm. And the gal had said to me, well, I don't know what I for the interview, I'm going to have you coach me, but I don't really know what I need. And I said, okay, well, that's what I help you with. So what is it that you want? And I'm going to share this with your folks here today. And she said, okay, so I want to make an extra $1 million so I can purchase a villa in Italy. I said, okay, let's work on that. So I asked her to put a heart in the middle of her page. And then I guided her through a process of, well, in fact, we could do it if we have time. But anyway,
well, let's do it.
Okay.
This show, I love doing experimental and in practical things. So
okay,
yeah, by all means.
It just takes a moment. So another thing that Goddess knows is she knows that we are not just a walking head, right? Mm-hmm. That we are an embodied being, and that we can use our heart in order to gain access to a greater knowing, basically. So that's this process that I'm going to be sharing with you. And so you simply write in the middle of your paper a heart. And an empowered question is not, why is this happening to me? But an empowered question is, how can I? So in this case, when I was working with this gal, as I said, how can I create an additional 1 million? And I said, over what period of time do you want to do this? She goes, over the next 6 months. I go, okay, great. Put that in the center. And so once each one of your listeners have that cohesive thought, and it needs to be something that you can actually measure, so that if 6 months from now, it's by the way, it's this or something better. So she could be making well over $1 million, right? And how can I create an extra $1 million? And then you begin to take a deep heart breath. Put your hand over your heart And this has actually been created by heart math, scientifically validated to calm your nervous system and to bring in creativity. So taking a deep heart breath. And think of a time in your life when you felt a deep sense of love and appreciation. Maybe it was for a special loved one, an animal companion, or maybe even a sacred place in nature. And if you feel comfortable, to maybe even close your eyes for just one moment, to go within, because within we can begin to see pictures, we can hear messages that come across. So deep heart breath, feeling that deep sense of love and appreciation. And as you settle into that place of safety and nurturing, ask yourself, how can I? And you have your question, how can I? And then you begin to notice if there's any images, any words, songs, people flashing through your mind. At this point, you don't need to know the how, you just need to know the what. Deep heart breath. Beautiful. And when you're ready to gently open your eyes back up and begin to pause with your shoulders and write down anything that came up. And so it's just simply that, asking, how can I? And it's so, sometimes I'll do this with a team of individuals, and other times it's just one-on-one. And then we begin the excavation process of selecting what is one possibility that you can begin to move forward with, because the mind can get confused. Another thing that Goddess knows is she knows that she can feel in her body when it's the right thing to move forward. And she knows the timing, right? You know that, Lorraine.
I
right?
love that. Yeah. I was just going to say, I've been doing a lot of first and second chakra work, which is really deep work and a lot of shadow, a lot of connection to intergenerational events and traumas that I'm helping to clear out for myself and for all those that went before and for all those that will come after. And that was a beautiful exercise because it took me straight into some of the work that I've been doing. And heart math, for anyone who hasn't done any research into heart math, I highly recommend that you just poke about, because amazing science that the heart is so powerful, far more energy from the heart than from your brain. I think it's something like 5 times more energy or something.
Yeah, and they're saying also that there's more connections. Like we used to think that our brain was like our CEO, and it is for our nervous system and our immune system. Another reason why it's so important to tonify, right, our body, and use it as an instrument that we can walk forward into the world with. So if you're tanked, what do you think that does to your immune system? Yeah. You know, and so many people are like, I need to keep my vibrancy up. So the heart acts as a superpower, but they're noticing, it was actually the gut, that there's 90. So we have 3 brains, head, heart, and gut, right? Yep. And Goddess knows that too, right? When you get that gut punch, or in your gut. But they're saying that 90% of the messages are actually going from our gut to our head, not the other way around.
Isn't that amazing? So people, sometimes I when I talk to clients and to others, they walk around, and I'm guilty of this, like totally guilty of this. I thought my body for the longest time was to move my head around. I thought that was the purpose of it. And what I've discovered through a lot of self-discovery and that kind of thing is our body is so wise, and to have our gut send more signals to our brain than our brain sends to our gut tells you how important that gut instinct is, that gut feeling. Yeah. That is so awesome. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I have to share with you really what's been coming up for me talking about gut too, is I started doing live events again. So for a number of years, like you talked about, me taking women to Bali, I call it energetically charged places in the world.
Yeah.
because I don't want to just take you anywhere. I want to take you to places that have a high vibe and have a sense of, a sense of spirituality, really. And so Bali, Isla Mujeres, Sedona, and here on the Central Coast. And I'm actually going to be looking for taking women to Hawaii. That's one of my reasons I'm going to Hawaii as well. So where was I going with that, though? Just, the power of the microbiome is just how important it is for us to gather together. So whether it's virtually or in person, but in person preferably, because it's that. And I just had a retreat that we did 2 weeks ago, and the women were craving that sense of just being able to look in other people's eyes. But it's bigger than that. What we've began to learn is that there's this interconnectedness of how we co-regulate our emotions and our microbiomes, which is our gut health, really. And I'm just thinking what travesty it's been that people have felt so isolated during this pandemic time, and just how important it is. It's almost counterculture that we do thrive in community. And that's really what I'm taking a stand for, is how can we as women help to collectively support each other, and in person preferably, but certainly online. I feel a resonance with you from the moment you started speaking.
Yeah. Well, and our voice and sound is so important. I mean, one of the reasons why people are feeling so disjointed and tired and out of alignment and that kind of thing is we've had this barrage of sound and visuals sent our way for the last, for many years, but very intensely for the last couple of years, that have been negative, divisive, fear creating, like all those things that create separation rather than connection.
It's funny that you're saying that too, that separation, like we've all been feeling it. And I was thinking, what in the world is that about? But it's really, the way I look at it, is that everything is put on our path for learning. Absolutely. So instead, going back to that question of why is this happening to me, instead asking, what can I learn from this? So what I've been learning from this divisiveness is just how important collaboration is. Just like what we're doing here today is we're having a conversation, and Goddess knows where this is going to go, right?
Well, that's why it's called a candid conversation, because who knows what's going to come up, and who knows what our listeners might offer. If you're following our conversation and you have a juicy tidbit that you want to jump in there with, by all means. I love it, and I encourage it when our listeners and watchers help us shape the show into something that is most interesting and useful to them. So if you have questions or thoughts, by all means. And I don't know if you heard what I said earlier about the fact that on this show, every comment, every like, every share triggers something good in the world, which happens to be a day's worth of fresh water wherever it's needed. Because I do believe in that connection. I do believe that Goddess knows how we're all interconnected, and every action should trigger another response somewhere. And if you can make that positive, like just imagine if everything you did in your day could trigger a positive response for you and for someone else.
I so appreciate that.
What a way to live life.
Yes. And to know that every action that we take, and thought, by the way, and energy transmission has an impact on the world out there. That's, I was laying in bed this morning, and I was thinking really what makes a difference in our world. And one of the things I've been working with, which is what you're talking about, is like how we realize how we're connected. And it comes first from knowing who we be in the world.
I love that.
Yeah. And so that's the work I've been doing. And it's actually it's something I learned in my leadership program, but it's also in the book Atomic Habits. So if you haven't read that book, really powerful tools. But what they talk about, what I've been teaching, is that from who we be affects the processes and then affects the outcomes. And I was thinking, what might be a good example of that? And think about Oprah. So Oprah is just a, what do you call it? A powerhouse, right? She's everybody knows who she is, and who does she be in the world? How does she take a stand for truth telling, for growth in consciousness? What other attributes might you add to that, Lorraine?
Yeah, actually, what comes to mind, if I can share this with you about Oprah, and I guess this message might be for someone because it's popped into my head, so I'll just say it, is I was actually, there was a negative thing, and I'm trying to, maybe you can help me wrap my head around it.
Sure.
There was at one point, she excluded her best friend from coming over to her based on her fears of what was in the media. And for someone that is so enlightened and so inclusive and so understanding, it's been a challenge for me to get my head around that. So I don't know if you heard about that, or if you have any insights, or if our listeners have any insights, but there's this sense that even those among us who can be the most enlightened and the most progressive and that kind of thing can still make, well, maybe that's the learning. Maybe that's it. They can still make errors in judgment.
Yeah.
They can still make decisions based in fear instead of that goddess energy, that power, because that was not an empowered choice that she made. And it was an awful thing to put out there as an example to the world.
So I have a question for you. So what did you find most difficult to accept in what she did? Was it because she was excluding someone, or she was judging someone?
I think it was the judgment and the exclusion, both of those things.
Okay.
It felt like at the beginning of the show, I talked about the saboteurs. We all have an elixir of saboteurs. And I felt like her elixir of saboteurs was ruling her behavior and her thoughts.
Okay.
And I had always respected Oprah to be able to overcome that. And I think maybe that was it, is that recognition that we are all human beings.
Yeah.
And we do things that sometimes are hurtful to others.
Yeah. Oh,
and it's that hurtfulness, that intentional exclusion. And that made her best friend separate from her.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, I've been working with maybe we talked about this before, I can't remember, but I've been working with the empowerment and the disempowerment triangle. And
tell us more about that. Yes.
Before I do, though, because this is a good example, what I was mapping as you were talking was your concern about her judgment and exclusion. Everything is an opportunity for us to learn. And so I was like, okay, so what is the flip of that? Acceptance, inclusion, and then there was a hurtful part. So what would be the antonym for you for hurtful?
That would be healing. So an opportunity, perhaps the hurt was created so that there was an opportunity to heal. I mean, we don't know what the relationship, media talks about the relationship between the two women, but we don't really know unless we're in that relationship what's going on. So perhaps the hurt was an opportunity for healing.
And what if, because I'm a catalyst, I tell people that I work with, right, you probably are too, right? And I said, you're going to work with me, and there's going to be some times where we have a rub. And when that rub happens, I'm holding you in love. And I'm inviting you to hold yourself with love too. So what I'm seeing is, even if she didn't mean to teach this point, she's teaching us what our highest values are, which are acceptance, inclusion, and healing. Right? Okay, so going back to that disempowerment and the empowerment triangle. And so This is the work I've also been doing, and it's part of the Goddess Knows, because we, for thousands of years, have been in the disempowerment position. And in order, so that's called the victim. And so if you think about it, so this is the disempowerment triangle, and the apex here is victimhood. When you flip it up like a clamshell, then it is the co-creator. So how do we get from victim to co-creator? Is we ask the question, what do I want? I was amazed when I went to Bali, and I simply had this question of the women. I said, so what do you need? It could be something as simple as I need a Q-tip, or I need a hug, or I need to be acknowledged, right?
Yeah.
How difficult it is for we as women sometimes to ask for what we need. So that's the victim to co-creator. And then there's the part of us that is the persecutor. So maybe in this case, she was being the persecutor, right? She's saying her best friend was bad, wrong, whatever. But instead of being the persecutor, you can begin to be the challenger. So the challenger says, what is there to learn in this circumstance? So do you see how you can flip those
Beautiful.
two pieces? And then the other side, this is important too, I think, for women, is there's the rescuer, and then there's the coach. All of these, by the way, are transformed by asking an empowered question. So the rescuer, this is one of the things that Goddess knows too. And I have done it in my own life because I've raised my two boys. I was a little bit codependent, and I felt like I needed to rescue or fix the circumstance. Yeah. So as we even sit with our clients, right, I can go, oh, that's theirs to fix. Or what if there's nothing wrong, really? Right? So exactly. Asking the empowered question, which is, what do you have available to, how can you make a difference? What's a small step that you can take? And what are the resources that you have in order to do that? So you put the onus back on them. Like, think about even when you're working with your kids. So you want breakfast, you're 20.
Right? Or 40.
Okay, or older, right. Great. So what are some of the steps that you're going to take in order to do that? And by the way, do you want to make me breakfast too?
You're hungry? Oh, great. Make me some lunch.
Yeah, well, because I'm asking for what I need too. Like, even getting on this call today, I was having some technical difficulties with the internet. And I asked my beloved, I said, could you please make me something to, a smoothie in between my calls today? And he, of course, yes. So, but he wouldn't have known. He's not a mind reader.
Yeah. And you bring up a really important point. And that is, although we are interconnected, we're not mind readers. Oh. And one of the things that Goddess knows is we need to have an understanding of our own needs and to ask.
And yeah, let's say that one again.
An understanding of our own needs and ask. Can give some examples that will block us mentally. Absolutely. So I talked a little bit at the top of the show about some of the things that block us mentally, like pleaser. I mean, people love to be around pleasers because they please them all the time. But for a pleaser, they give as a way of receiving. And when they don't receive, it turns into resentment. So, perfectionists, they want things to look beautiful and to be beautiful and to be perfect. But of course, as you said, the triangle flips. The opposite of that, of course, is that you become detail oriented and you ostracize others, and you judge others as not perfect and ineffective, or whatever the judgment is. So hopefully that helps, Rachel. You can see some of the mental pieces, how we think. And I loved what you did there, Carrie, in terms of flipping that example around.
Yeah.
It's what we think and feel that can be turned, right?
Yes. And it's just by a question. We can be triggered, so there's an emotional response, and then we can begin, there's a 3-step process. Notice that something is in turmoil, identify what that thing is, and then choose. and over and over and over. But so that I want to go back to the perfectionist thing. Can anybody relate to that?
Oh, not at all. I've never been a perfectionist. No.
Right.
Anyone who knows me just knows I lied through my teeth.
So that perfectionist is knowing, because I've had to work with her also. So we've become friends. And when I'm working with my clients, I say your first version is going to be good enough. And it's like you look at the perfection of nature, and like it shows up in its grandeur, and it's that ability for us to go, okay, I'm divinely inspired. I'm going to provide this. And it's more important to get the product out there so we can make shifts in our life, in our, clients' lives. I'm imagining that your listeners we all are inextricably interconnected. And if we aren't able to make those shifts, I'll give an example. So I like many people, I didn't want to be a public speaker. I was like, I'd rather die, right? Yeah. But until I began to see that, so I became a speaker for the Pachamama Alliance. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's all about spiritual fulfillment and social impact and social justice. So it was created by Lynn Twist. So she's, what was it called? The book that she wrote was something like The Soul of Money. And I began to realize that these were these big issues that I had even as a young girl, had yearned. Just like you're helping with the water, I had seen children who were not fed enough. And I was like, how is this possible when we live in a world that is so abundant, right? And so I said, okay, I'm going to be a public speaker. So I got out of my way. And I think that's with perfectionism too, is we get out of our own egoic way and we say there's a bigger mission, there's a bigger purpose to what we're doing. So if we can connect to that, like even getting on here today, I was like, oh, my hair isn't just right or whatever. And I was like, get over yourself, Carrie. So
I love the fact that my mom at one point said, everyone is more concerned about themselves, like how they look and how people are going to judge them, than they are about judging you.
Oh, yes.
Exactly that. Just, get over yourself.
And my grandma says, keep moving. They're not going to notice.
Exactly. And by the time you get to, and I'm going to use our age, whatever age you are and the experience you have, you start to realize that the attractiveness is not in perfection. The attractiveness is in the imperfection. It's what makes people unique.
Exactly. And it makes you approachable. You had quoted Brene Brown from the very beginning. And I think it was something about that feeling unworthy. And so she talks a lot about this authenticity, right? Yeah. How important it is. And I find that it's actually an attraction factor. Like people, I was just writing about some of the hard knocks that I've had to go through in order to get where I am today, to know that to create this book, Goddess Knows. I don't even know if that's exactly what I'm going to call it, but that's the theme. Maybe it's important to even say that I too. So I was raised in an alcoholic family. So I was taught, to be quiet. Maybe many of us are like this, domesticated, I call it, or trained to look good, but stay quiet.
Yeah. Children should be seen and not heard.
Well, guess what? I'm rising from that.
Well, as a previous principal and teacher, let me tell you, children are seen and often heard.
Yes.
And it's wonderful because when they haven't yet put all these gates and blocks around themselves, and children are so creative. And I love that term that you used earlier, the creatrix. I mean, we've all got that inside us. And if we can tap into that, wonderful things happen. I'm wondering, well, not usually, but sometimes we pull an oracle card on the show.
Fun.
Would you be interested in doing that today?
Oh, let's do it.
Okay. And we only have a couple of minutes left. So
Okay.
I'm just going to shuffle and you just tell me when and we'll pull a card.
Okay. Now.
Okay. All right. Oh, how awesome. This one is, I don't know if you can see that, Rox, or if you can, healing the heart.
That's
and
a
how is
beautiful
that
image.
appropriate? Healing the heart. Let me read what that's all about. It's exactly what we're talking about. Wow. When you are wounded emotionally, you need time to regroup and find your center. You may have recently endured a breakup, a betrayal, lost someone close to you, or lost a connection that you gave too much power to. No matter the cause of the heartache, deep healing is called for. The path to healing the heart centers on reciprocity and the flow of both giving and receiving. Healing usually begins within and not from the outer conditions of your life. So focus at the beginning.
Wow. Was that powerful? Wow.
Healing the heart.
And is this an oracle deck that you've created?
No, it's actually called the Oracle of the Seven Energies.
Ah.
It's an awesome, awesome deck of cards. And
yeah.
the messages are just always, well, I've said this on other shows. I can't believe it's so aligned. But honestly, I've said that so often that I can't believe it so. But we have about two minutes left. So I'm so glad that was a good message for you and for other listeners.
Just meaningful.
Yeah. So how do people connect with you or get in touch with you?
Yes.
To learn more about what you do.
So I actually have a freebie for your listeners. Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Should I put it in the chat?
By all means, or just tell Roxy what it is.
Okay. Got it. So I'm going to put it in the chat just so she can have access to it. Okay. So I have recently been creating what we call a freebie that helps you to basically create more time in your days. And let me tell you the method to my madness here. So I began to realize that until we can pause and ask ourselves these bigger questions, like if we're in survival mode, it's really hard to take it to the next level. But when you are actually able, so this is a first step, to make time in your day so that you can live with juicy aliveness, hence the title there.
Love it.
And you and I are both about juicy aliveness, right? So that's one of the ways in which you can connect with me. They have in that the link that I have there are 10 ways in which I've been noticing that men and women, but I primarily work with women, have been wasting their time. So it's and it gives you ideas in which you can begin to take back your time. So for example, perfectionism is just knowing that what you offer is good enough. And so I have a few different other ways. So that would be one way, or Carrie Asuncion, Keys to Empowerment. I'm on Facebook both ways. More so, I'm starting to learn how to do Instagram. Yeah, thank you. Great, thank you. On cue, there we go.
There we are. Roxy's awesome.
That's a great way to connect with me. And you can always DM me, message me and say, let's connect. I would like if you have maybe a question, because this is just a short sampling of what's possible in your life. And so if I leave you with nothing else, is just what a joy and delight. I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to co-create something really remarkable. You inspire me, Lorraine. You really do.
Well, you inspire me, and I want to thank you for giving so much to our listeners and our watchers today. It's been such a delight to have you here, Carrie. And I want to also connect with people and let them know that if you want to join other like-minded people, you can also jump into the Facebook group called Mindfully Moving Forward. And you can join us any weekday, Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I know that your timing is different where you are, but Fridays, 10 a.m. Eastern here on the Edge of Fulfillment. And I am your host, Lorraine Lapointe, reminding you that at the edge of fulfillment, there's always a choice. You can stay on the edge and always get what you've always got, or you can become just a little courageous and move that into that healing heart and move beyond the edge to get what you really want. And I encourage you to reach out to Carrie, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
Blessings.